Hello everyone and welcome! Every now and then, Riot releases new lore capable of teabagging my expectations. I am really happy to tell you that Mount Targon is full of epic stories and heroic events. But before we dig deeper into them, we need to go through the basic lore behind Mount Targon. Mount Targon is described as the mightiest and highest peak in Runeterra. Many legends were born here. Stories about gods, celestial beings, and blazing warriors falling from the sky. According to some of the legends, the mountain itself is a sleeping titan. The bottom of the mountain is surrounded with villages and camps of different tribes, such as the Rakor. This is a warrior tribe that endured the harsh climate of these lands for millennia. Another well-known tribe is the Solari. These are the people that bring faith to these lands. Their high temple sits on the eastern slope of the mountain in a place that only the strongest can reach. The very peak of the mountain is known for giving enlightenment and wisdom to anyone brave enough to reach the top. Unfortunately, the mountain finds the vast majority of these challengers unworthy, and to be judged unworthy by Mount Targon is to die. Only those with strength, character, resolve, willpower, and determination have a chance of even seeing the top. What's even worse is that not everyone that manages to conquer the mountain is able to find what he was looking for. Some claw their way up there only to find it empty, because the mountain itself has found their soul lacking. For a handful of others, however, the mountain opens up to show them a mythical realm normally outside the reach of mortal beings. Many fail the last test, and they turn away in fear from this inhuman realm. Of the rare few that press on, most never return, while others may reappear minutes, years, or even centuries later. Whatever is happening at the peak of Mount Targon seems to be bound to the sun, moon, and the aspects. Many believe that the aspects are reformed bodies of all the climbers found worthy. Whenever one of the aspects appears, it brings both joy and fear. People know that the aspect will protect them, but they also know that evil is coming. It is very unusual for more than a single aspect to walk the earth of Runeterra at any given time. Seeing multiple aspects roaming around at the same time means only one thing. A threat of unimaginable power is arising, and Mount Targon will be there to stop it. One of the stories of Mount Targon begins at its very bottom. Atreus was a proud young Rakoran named after one of the 4 stars that formed the warrior constellation in the night sky. This constellation is known to the Rakor as the Pantheon. Atreus wasn't the strongest, fastest, or even the most skilled with bow, spear, or any other weapon. His greatest traits were determination and endurance. He was the first one to wake up in the morning, and he was the last one to leave the training grounds in the night. As Atreus continued his warrior training, a rivalry started developing between him and another young Rakoran called Pylus. Pylus was born into a line of great warriors. He, as those before him, was skillful, strong, and popular. None of his age could beat him in the fighting circle. Only Atreus refused to back down, pushing himself up to fight on until his body gave up. While this earned Atreus the respect of his instructors, Pylus was furious. Over time, Atreus became ignored by his fellow young Rakoran, and even suffered numerous beatings from Pylus and his followers. Atreus, being the good person he was, he endured it all without telling his family, as he knew it would only cause them pain. One early winter morning, the young warriors found a smoking ruin of one of their outposts. The snow was painted in red with dead bodies laying all around. Suddenly, warriors covered in fur and heavy iron armor jumped up from beneath the snow. None of the warriors have completed their training, and their instructors were too old to fight. And yet, they killed few of these barbaric warriors. Unfortunately, the Rakor got outnumbered, and they were cut down one by one. Pylus and Atreus fought back to back, being the last Rakor still standing. They knew they had to warn their village, and so they needed a plan. Atreus plunged his spear into a barbarian's throat, while Pylus cut down two more, creating a momentary gap in the circle of enemies. Atreus told Pylus to go, saying that he would hold back the enemy so that Pylus could get away. There was no time to argue, as Atreus was already charging into the enemy, and so Pylus ran. Atreus fought as long as he could, but soon a heavy axe slammed into his chest, making him slip into unconsciousness. After a while, Atreus woke up. He wasn't in the celestial afterlife as he had expected, but upon the mountain where he had fallen. He checked around for survivors, but everyone was dead. Atreus was shocked to see Pylus laying nearby with a throwing axe in his back. Fortunately, Pylus was still alive. Despite the hatred between them, Atreus put Pylus on his shoulders and he began marching home. After 3 days, they arrived at their village and he finally allowed himself to collapse. The next time he woke up, he was happy to see that the village had not been attacked. Over the next few months, Atreus and Pylus became close friends, and together they threw themselves into their training with renewed vigor and purpose. During their training, they heard stories of great heroes climbing to the peak of Mount Targon and being blessed with great power. And so, after finally completing the training, they started preparing for the journey to the top themselves. They knew the odds of survival. Only 1 in 1,000 was able to reach the peak, and yet they decided to join a larger group gathered from all the Rakoran villages around the foothills of the mountain. As they began the ascent, the sun turned dark as the silver moon passed before it. Some climbers got scared, but Atreus took it as a sign that he was on the right path. After weeks of climbing, only half of the group remained. The higher they climbed, the less of the group endured. Some got buried beneath avalanches, frozen to death, or shattered on the rocks below them. Some even got mad from the lack of air and exhaustion. One by one, the mountain claimed them all, until only Pylus and Atreus remained. Exhausted and frozen, they finally made it to the top, only to find nothing. They saw no fabled city at the peak, nor any sky warrior heroes waiting to embrace them. Only ice, death, and rocks twisted into strange circular shapes. Pylus collapsed, the last of his strength finally giving out. Atreus roared in frustration, knowing that Pylus had not the strength to make the descent. Atreus sat down with him. Soon, he witnessed the life drain from his friend in his lap. Then, the heavens revealed themselves. A gateway opened before Atreus, golden light spilling out, warming his face. He could see a city in the distance with a heavenly figure waiting for him. Tears ran down Atreus' face. He looked down to see that Pylus had died in his arms, with a smile on his face. Atreus stood up, closed his friend's eyes, and laid him gently on the melting snow. He stepped forward to meet his guide, walking through the veil of reality. to the real Targon. Months passed, and it was assumed that the mountain has claimed both Atreus and Pylus. It was at this time that the northern barbarians decided to make their return. They raided few isolated villages around before going for the Solari shrine high upon the mountain. The Solari guards were heavily outnumbered, and yet they stood ready to die defending the relics within the shrine. As the enemy closed in, the clouds started swirling around Mount Targon, revealing its full majesty at the center. The wind grew stronger and stronger, whipping snow in the warriors' eyes. As if out of nowhere, a golden city appeared in the sky. Right after that, the 4 stars of Pantheon constellation pulsed brightly. Then they turned dark. Simultaneously, the burning light of a falling star appeared within the golden city. The light slammed the ground between the 2 armies with a mighty force that shattered the ground around. It was clear that this was no star, but a warrior mantled in starlight and bearing a golden shield and a spear of legend. He had landed in warrior's crouch, one knee lowered to the ground. And as he looked up at the enemy defiling the lands of Mount Targon, the Rakorans saw it was Atreus. The aspect of the warrior has infused him, and he was now both mortal and immortal, the incarnation of war made flesh. He had become the Pantheon. He rose from his crouch, eyes blazing with celestial light, and the enemy knew death had come for them. The battle was over quick. No one could stand against Pantheon. With his armor and weapon covered in the enemy's blood, Pantheon marched into the roaring ice storm and disappeared. After everything calmed down, it was obvious what happened. The Pantheon aspect has obliterated Atreus' personality, memories, and emotions. His body was nothing more than a shell for the supernatural aspect of war. Atreus was not the first Pantheon that appeared on Runeterra. There have been others, and there will likely be more. It is important to remember that because of the limitations of human flesh, the Pantheon can be killed. But it takes great effort to do so. For the Solari Elders, his appearance is both blessing and a curse, as they know that the time of darkness is yet to come. Months passed before the next appearance of Pantheon. It was in the deserts surrounding Mount Targon. Here, Pantheon stood alone as an armed convoy slowly approached him. The convoy included 30 mercenaries, armed with crossbows and blades. The leader of the expedition was riding a black steed. They stopped in a safe distance away from Pantheon. "You come with murder in your hearts," Pantheon said. His voice was as hard as iron and strangely accented. "I am of the mountain. You shall go no further." The mercenaries smirked. "Piss off, madman," one of them shouted. "Least we plant your head on a spike to mark our passing." "You are a long way from home, friend," the leader of the convoy said. "We journey to the mountain ourselves. There need to be no blood spilled here." Pantheon didn't move an inch. "We are simple pilgrims and still have a long journey ahead of us," said the leader. "And besides, there is no way back for us now. Our ships have sailed, see?" he said, gesturing behind him. Behind the convoy, less than a mile distant, 3 ships were sailing away to the north. "We come with no ill intent, I assure you," the leader continued. "We merely seek wisdom." "Your tongue is forked, serpent," said Pantheon. "You seek the blood of the seer. Turn aside, or be slain." The leader's frown deepened as he turned away with a dismissive shrug. "So be it," he said. "Kill him." In an instant, crossbows were hefted to the shoulders, and the air was filled with loosed bolts. Pantheon didn't move from his position. However, the bolts clanged as they ricocheted from his heavy golden shield. Then he began to advance. He was in no hurry. He marched forward with grim resolve, with the sun shining behind him. Another flurry of crossbow bolts. Again, they were all turned aside by his shield. The first of the mercenaries launched herself towards him. She died in a blink of an eye, Pantheon's spear buried in her chest. The next two died almost as quickly. Pantheon's spear slashed a crimson line across one man's throat, and the rim of his shield cracked another's skull. "Take him!" shouted the leader as he pulled out a small gun. A cloud passed in front of the sun, allowing the mercenaries to finally see Pantheon clearly. His cloak was deep crimson, though in the twilight it seemed as if the stars gleamed in the shimmering fabric. That starlight also glittered in his unrelenting gaze, shadowed within the visor slits of his helm. Pantheon moved like liquid, every movement smooth and efficient. He was impossibly fast, faster than any man should be. He continued slaying mercenaries as he got closer and closer to the leader. Soon, those that remained alive decided to flee into the open deserts. The leader leveled his pistol at Pantheon and fired. Impossibly, Pantheon swayed aside at the last moment, and the shot merely scraped across the side of his helm. The leader swore and prepared another shot, but he was too slow. Pantheon's shield hit him across the chest and hurled him from his saddle. Pantheon's foot quickly came down on his torso, pinning him to the ground. "Who are you?" he hissed. "I am your death," he responded. "I am Pantheon." The leader desperately tried to grab his gun again. "Rejoice, mortal," said Pantheon. "It is a great honor to die beneath the Spear of Targon." The leader tried to respond, but Pantheon's spear drove down through his chest. Only blood bubbled from the dying man's lips. Pantheon pulled his weapon clear and turned away. Twilight had given way to dusk, and countless stars lit the night sky. A comet of burning fire streaked down toward the distant mountains, 100 miles east. Pantheon's eyes narrowed. "It's time then," he said to the darkness and began long journey back to Mount Targon. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of Atreus, a Rakoran kid that turned from being bullied into the Pantheon. And if you are desperate for more, don't worry, because there are still 4 parts of the Targon story left. If you liked this video, don't forget to rate it, and because I worked really hard on this video, don't forget to give me your feedback below in the comments. You all know how much I appreciate your support. Thank you all for being here, and as always, thank you come again. So the Pantheon's lore gave us really good facts to work with. Actually, not just the Pantheon's lore, but the lore of the entire Targon, because now we know that there is in fact more than one god. The thing that we don't know is what kind of god is the one that works with the heavens, or whatever you wanna call it. Some people say that it is similar to Nagake Buros. I don't think so, because Nagake Buros is basically testing you in a different way. He's testing if you are going for whatever you believe in. But here, the mountain is actually just testing your strength. There are still 2 more parts for the lore to be uncovered. We know that there is Leona, then there is Diana. I'm guessing the next one would be Tariq, and then there is Aurelion Sol. But who knows, maybe there's gonna be someone else. And because I have nothing else to say, see you next time!